Well, hello and good morning, good evening, good night, or whatever time you're watching this. I'm going to record a couple of reaction videos. And this time we are going at Chris Titus Tech again. But it's Fedora versus Debian and Arch. I really am interested in this because I got into Chris Titus Tech when he did the... Was it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month on a distribution? And I actually really liked those videos. So let's see what he says about Fedora versus Debian and Arch Linux.
And I don't think I've ever really done it properly. And I wanted to actually review a distribution from Linux. And this is something that I might do, depending on what you guys think. Hit the thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. And I wanted to look at it from a perspective of what's actually comprising these desktops from the foundational level. I don't really care about desktop environments, and many distribution reviews I see on YouTube is just cringe because I'm like, all you're doing is reviewing the desktop environment, not even what makes up the Linux distribution.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree. Like, he's on point here. Go watch almost any Linux distribution review and they spend way too much time. This is what it pre-installed. Like almost every... Here's the fact. 99.9% of distributions have LibreOffice, Thunderbird, Firefox, stuff like that. It's almost a standard nowadays. Here's the thing. If you're looking at the menu, what's this pre-installed on a distribution, it don't matter if it's Debian, Arch, Ubuntu, your distribution of choice. They are all the same. Stock standard fucking Cinnamon or XFCE just themed up is not fucking interesting, and they all have mostly the same packages installed. So I don't watch distribution reviews anymore for that factor. I am 1000% behind him here.
So this video, I wanted to kind of just do a broad overview of Fedora versus Arch versus Debian and understand.
He said it wrong compared to the title. We must erase him. I need to fix my cam here, by the way.
All three, because you see me bouncing back and forth between Arch and Debian. And if you're not familiar, Arch is like, there's so many derivatives, Manjaro, Endeavor OS, all these, pretty much for my sake, I think of them the exact same. They're all Arch.
Beside Manjaro. Manjaro's not Arch, but everyone else is. Again, it tries... Okay, this is a pet peeve of mine, okay? When YouTube Linux gurus don't understand the difference between Manjaro and Arch, I'm like, it's so fundamental simple that if you can't see that, you should not be talking about it. Like, I'm sorry, but just fucking read their own fucking description about what Arch Linux or Manjaro Linux is. Manjaro is kind of Arch's version of Ubuntu. It's not 100% compatible with the Arch, just like Ubuntu's not 100% compatible with the base Debian distribution.
Because that's what they're based on. Pretty much all the commits go through Arch. It's Arch. And then on Debian, you have like Ubuntu, KDE Neon, you name it, Deepin. And
again, yeah, based on Ubuntu, but Ubuntu is not Debian. It's really misleading to say this. I know he's taking the distributions in, putting everything under one umbrella, but it's kind of misleading and it's setting a bad precedent because he's the same guy. When he tried Debian for a month or a week or something like that, that used Ubuntu PPAs in Debian. Go watch his Debian video. Using Debian for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, I can't remember how long it was. He installed Debian on, I think it was on a live stream, and he used Ubuntu PPAs under Debian. I can understand that because back then he was kind of new to Linux, but now we are 2, 3, 4 years into it with him. He still thinks Ubuntu is Debian.
In Elementary OS, there's so many different Linux distributions, Linux Mint. I'm sure I'm missing some major ones that people use.
Mint is not a Debian distribution, it's an Ubuntu distribution. Linux Mint is not binary compatible with Debian. Linux Mint Debian edition is binary compatible with Debian. Already right here, like you see how it's confusing people.
But all those are Debian. So you have Debian, you have Arch, and those are really the only two I've really kind of gone back and forth. But I keep fighting with myself because I get over on Debian, I'm like, man, I really want newer packages, and I want to get on like more of the bleeding edge. And then I get on the bleeding edge, and I'm like, yeah, this is nice, and having the AUR auto build stuffs.
Why don't you use Debian testing then? Like, I don't get it. Debian testing is almost as up-to-date as Arch Linux. Does he not know that you can run Debian testing, or does he not regard Debian testing as a way of running Debian? I don't know.
Convenient, but at the end of the day, it's just a little bit too rough around the edges. I like that stable experience from Debian. Then I go back and forth.
Then Debian test, like, honestly, I'm not joking here. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to oversaturate or anything like that. But Debian testing is Arch Linux stable. That's what it is. If you want what Arch Linux is providing you, but with security, more security focus and way more stability focus, you run Debian testing. It's even like you could even debate that the Manjaro is Arch done stable and stuff like that. I would even say Debian testing is way better than Manjaro from a stability aspect, security aspect, and it's a rolling-ish release. It's every time there comes a new distribution, you have to jump repositories, or you can just put testing in your source file, and it will automatically do that all the time, because the testing repositories kind of have two names. They have the name of the distribution that they're building off testing. So I think this now it's Bookworm. That will be the next release of Debian. Or you could just put testing instead of Bookworm. And as far as I have understood it, it should just automatically just always be on the testing branch.
And I just kind of fight with myself like a two-faced monster. And I want to stop that today, because then there's Fedora, which was one of the original desktop environments I tried. Actually, I think it was the very first Linux desktop I ever tried to daily drive. And I just didn't know enough about Linux desktop at that time to really make use of it properly.
And one could debate that he still don't.
And I knew a lot about Linux server, but not Linux desktop. So now that I have a huge, vast array of experience going between all these different distributions, here's my thoughts on Fedora Linux versus pretty much everything else, because Fedora is a beautiful blend of Debian and Arch. It's more rolling, so you have a more up-to-date kernel. It has
#Debian testing. Debian testing is basically Fedora Linux. It's just Debian's version of Fedora Linux.
Has newer packages than Debian, but not so bleeding edge that you get breakage and it doesn't move quite as fast as Arch, but close enough that you get a more stable experience, but not at the cost of really missing out on
#Debian testing
on much. The only thing that Arch has really going for it over Fedora, I think, is AUR, and I really don't even like the AUR because I like to build my own package.
Okay, he likes to build his own packages, but I don't like the AUR either, because it's one big quality mess. It's one quality assurance mess. We'll say this, and it's one big security mess. Nobody really governs what's going on in the AUR. We're just lucky that nobody's really fucking with us in there.
Packages and do all that myself, as AUR's just run by neckbeards, and occasionally you get a really bad commit in there, and that's just gonna break your system, and that's why I don't really like it. Where Fedora, I know I could have
I'm starting to agree more and more with them.
A very, very stable experience all the time and get the best of both worlds. So
But again, Debian testing provides the same experience as Fedora. I don't know why he I honestly I wish he would explain why he's not going into Debian testing.
Review real fast Arch and what I like, because Arch is an amazing system, and if we look, Arch has many different things. Also, by the way, I'm using Obsidian Notes. This is actually my first or second day of using it, and I think it might be my new favorite
Two things here. Who fucking cares? Okay, who cares? That's not what you're talking about in the video here. I know I go on sidetracks all the time, but who the fuck cares about what note-taking apps that you're using? Secondly, Obsidian is fucking amazing. I have used it on and off myself.
Program. So video coming soon on that. Subscribe if you haven't. On Arch, I will say this is a rolling release, which basically means you get the most up-to-date kernels. So if you...
I hate that people don't understand what a rolling release is. A rolling release don't necessarily mean that you're getting the latest and greatest. A rolling release in its purest form means that everything is coming out from one repo. you don't jump repos. That's basically what it means. You get updates in the form and function and speed that the developers dictate. So you could still have like a rolling release that, like Debian could be a rolling release, like Debian stable could be a rolling release if they never change repositories. And it didn't froze specific packages and wait to update them to the next release. So you don't change repositories in a non-rolling release and you freeze certain packages. Rolling release in its purest form means that you stay on the same repo forever. You don't have to change repo. And they are not freezing specific programs to a next release. That can be done with, like, Arch is doing up to date and all of that shit, like Tumbleweed is doing. And you can do it in the nature of Debian testing. You can do it in the nature of Manjaro, where they try to not be as aggressive with updates in the name of security and stability, but they are still rolling releases. Again, we can debate if Debian test is rolling release, because depending on how you set it up, you have to jump repo. So rolling release don't have to mean that you're getting the latest and greatest. And again, it's a pet peeve I have with him, that he just said he has this vast experience and he don't understand what the fuck a rolling release is. It has nothing to do with how old or how fast you're getting updated packages. It's the delivering method of the packages that makes it rolling.
If you want the latest kernel commit, Arch has it. Latest Linux kernels. And that's pretty awesome. I love that about Arch. It also has the AUR.
Again, you can get the latest kernel under Debian, Ubuntu, Debian backports, Ubuntu have the mainline PPAs you can enable. You can get the latest kernel on any distribution you want. Either you can compile yourself, or there are people out there that have done it for you. It's just more work.
Which I just alluded to. This is a community build kit. And the build kit from the AUR basically says, hey, I'm going to build this project for you with this script that I've created and uploaded to the AUR, Arch User Repository, what it means. However, this is flawed. Sometimes packages aren't updated, or bad updates happen. This is why you shouldn't really use the AUR. Now,
agree.
It also uses what really defines a distribution is its package manager. How do you install programs? How does the system update? Package manager is huge, and this one uses Pacman.
I kind of don't agree with that. I'm like 50-50. A package manager is really important, but I don't think it's the thing that mostly defined a distribution. What defines a distribution is something like, is it rolling or static? What is the philosophy on security? What is the philosophy on updating packages? How is it maintained? What is the user experience of it and stuff like that? The packs. Let's be honest. Most people don't even fucking install packages in the command line anymore. They use a software center.
And Pacman has some really funky syntax. It's okay. I mean, almost every Linux package manager is good in its own right, but Pacman's syntax is funky. Like you'll do like SYU to update the database and your system and upgrade it. Or you might do like a pacman-s git to install git. You might do a pacman-q to query it, or a q lowercase I to query and get information. There's all these weird syntax, funky syntax. It works. You just got to know a little bit about it to make it going, but it's not necessarily bad, but I wouldn't call it very good either. It's just traditional.
It's a really good, example of, I will call it an engineering problem, but a problem within Linux is that we love to overcomplicate simple tasks. And the Pacman syntax is a really, really good example of engineers not thinking about that normal people are going to use it, or engineers trying to be clever and smart and stuff like that. Just why overcomplicate simple tasks? Like, honestly, why overcomplicate it?
So that's really what makes the foundation of these distributions. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what does Arch look like? And I'm like, well, it can look like anything. Debian can look like anything. I don't really care about how it looks, because what you're seeing on the screen is what I like. And I put Arch looks like this, Debian looks like this, and now Fedora looks like this, because I can control everything, down to the nuts and bolts, every little thing that gets in this operating system. That's why my operating systems pretty much look the same. Going forward, it's going to probably be a variation of this as I keep tweaking. And
yeah, and I didn't meant to pause there. I was just getting ready to pause. But yeah, that's the only reason why I really love Linux. That exact reason there. I can express myself on my desktop. I can control the operating system. I don't care that much about open, close, and blah, 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 and all that fucking shit. That's why I love Linux. I have control over it 100%.
Eventually, I'm going to release this project, and it's going to be fantastic. But let's
based on EasyArch script, by the way.
Let's keep going with our distro review here. And next, we're going to go into Debian, Ubuntu, Linux Mint. Pretty much all of them are this.
Yeah, it's actually like, if you look at it like this, Linux Mint based on Ubuntu, Ubuntu based on Debian. So it's kind of like a heritage line he made there.
And these are stable releases for the most part. Typically,
Debian testing, Debian sit, you can run those if you want.
These will run 6 to 24 months behind. Which
no, you naughty boy. That don't mean that they will run 6 to 24 months behind. Both Debian, Ubuntu, and Mint have the latest version of a lot of software. Even Ubuntu is having almost as up-to-date software as Arch have, depending, like, especially browsers and shit like that. The same with Mint. If you're then enabling snap packages or flat packages, you're getting as up-to-date packages as on the Arch. Again, he don't understand the difference between a rolling release, a static release, or a stable release. A stable release don't necessarily mean that you're running behind the current release. Like I said, under Ubuntu, if Firefox gets updated, you get a new Firefox. You may not get it on day one, you may get it like a couple of days later, but you're getting a new version of Firefox. If you're running Debian or Ubuntu, and Linux Mint, Debian is another case if you're talking Debian stable. They are running typically 6 months behind at minimum. Typically. That's Debian, that's not Ubuntu and Mint. You don't understand the difference between Debian, Ubuntu, and Ubuntu-based distribution, and Debian stable-based distribution. Just don't understand it, apparently. And again, that's why I said, what he's going to say now will determine if the Debian is the same as Ubuntu, that's the same as Mint statement is making sense. It's not. Because Ubuntu is not being run like Debian. Mint is not being run like Debian. Mint is being run like Ubuntu. So what you have in the Ubuntu repositories, you will have in the Mint repositories. But you will not have them in the Debian stable repositories. If you're running Debian testing, we're talking something else. So again, his vast experience with Linux desktop over the years don't seem that vast if you ask me.
Which means the Linux kernel runs pretty far behind, but it's tested. You're not going to get a whole bunch of really bad commits.
Okay, so if he's talking about the kernel, I would kind of agree with him.
And it works really, really well. Even some RHEL-based servers like I've used back in the day, like CentOS 6 and CentOS 7, were good. Rocky Linux.
Isn't it CentOS instead of CentOS? Like, when you have OS behind the name, you stop pronouncing things after when the OS starts to become. So if I make my name is Kent, so if I make a Kent OS, it's not Kentos. Kentos. It's Kent OS. Is that not how you pronounce it?
Alma Linux, all these are RHEL-based servers, and they will run upwards of 5 years behind. Sometimes.
I have to say this when he's talking kernels. He do know that you can backport in support for newer hardware into those kernels. That's why kernel version numbers don't mean shit. I run Debian, I run OpenSUSE Leap, and I run a rolling release Arch that have the latest and greatest kernel, as he said. I also run Ubuntu, that's a little bit in between. I've run all of those on my physical hardware over the time, and you know what? I can run Leap, I can run RHEL, I can run CentOS on my hardware because they backport in support for newer hardware. The kernel you get under Ubuntu, CentOS, and all of that is not the same kernel as Linux puts out. They do a lot of tweaking. And if you want to see it in real life, go run Leap And then when you're updating the kernel, once in a while you get a shit ton of firmware updates, AMD firmware updates, Wi-Fi firmware updates to the kernel, and so on. Network card firmware updates to the kernel. That's basically driver support that they're backporting into the kernel, like roughly speaking. So if it's 4.5, 5 point whatever, what you may not getting is the features that are baked into the kernel. So if, let's say, there comes out a new memory management scheme in kernel 5.10, you probably won't get that in 4.10, for example. Some of you guys will say, oh, well, it's because he's making it dumbed down so people understand it. That's an excuse. Dumbing it down, I don't buy that.
In some instances, some sysadmins will be running a 10-year-old kernel. So don't think that it's 6 to 24 months behind is really that bad of a thing. It really isn't. But if you have bleeding edge hardware, like you go out and buy the AMD graphics card on the day of release, you're going to want a rolling release.
No, it depends if your distribution makers are backporting in hardware support to the kernel they are running. He has no fucking idea what he's talking about right now. Like, I just explained it.
Because that's not going to work on one of these old kernels, because back when these kernels were created, that hardware didn't even exist. So that's where stable releases fall short, is bleeding edge hardware. And most instances, a stable and rolling kernel, I don't really care, because most of my hardware is about 2+ years old. So between Arch and Debian, this is not a deal breaker. However, it does use apt, which is the most common package manager. Meaning it's the most easy to understand. Most instructions are like apt install git, apt purge git.
Why is he using the $sign this time? You don't. Here's the thing: you don't need the $sign to do the apt command. I'm just saying it. He's confusing people. Like,
you could do apt find and then or search, whatever it might be, to get your package of choice. So really easy to grasp, but it is old. So the apt is very old, long in the tooth. Some commits. I remember probably one of the most famous bugs of apt I've seen in recent years is when you saw Linus use...
Okay, we can't use a system because it was developed long time ago. Arch Linux was developed in 2000, or got released in 2003, so that's also old. Why the fuck are you using Pac-Man? It's been around since 2003. Don't he understand that things get updated, they get fixed, they get patched, they get, reviewed, they get refreshed? Yeah, apps is... actually, I don't... When did apt came out? Before it was apt-get, and apt-get are two different things. They do the same, but they're two different things. Apt-get is the old way of doing it, apt is the new way of doing it. I will put up here, when Pac-Man got released, the package manager for Arch, and... oh, my nose is itchy. And when apt, not apt-get, but apt got released. Because I actually think apt, I'm not sure, but apt could be younger than Pac-Man.
Pop OS, and he did an apt upgrade, and because of some package being his system wasn't up to date, and since he was trying to install Steam, it wiped out his whole system when he did an apt upgrade. And that was because the Pop OS team had a special version of apt that wasn't properly patched, or not enough, obviously quality control went into it.
That's not the package manager's fault, that's the developer's fault. So you can't blame the package manager for the developers being idiots.
So it really messed things up bad. And that's kind of a limitation of apt, that sometimes these old things that you retrofit for years and years,
Pac-Man
is maybe not the best, but it's old, it's reliable for the most part, unless you have like Pop OS messing things up, and it's a pretty easy syntax. So overall, I like apt a little bit better than Pac-Man, but at the same time, it's not my favorite package manager because of its age. And both of Pac-Man and apt don't do something called differential updates. Usually they're downloading the entire package, even if it's just an update, where some of the newer package managers that we're about to get into with Fedora do differential updates, meaning they don't have to grab the entire thing.
DNF, Yum, Zip or Cypher from not Red Hat, from what's it called? SUSE do the same thing. Yeah, that's about it. It's actually, now I'm thinking about it, there's no package manager under Debian that do differentials update. It's always RPM packages.
They can just grab the difference and install it, so it's less download, less downtime, and it's a faster upgrade process. So that brings us to Fedora. Oh man, I absolutely love Fedora, mainly because you get a rolling release, which gives you the latest kernels.
No. Again, he don't understand rolling releases. What Fedora is what is deemed a semi-rolling release. I'm going to explain again here. So, what is a semi-rolling release? It is, if you remember what I said before, is that a rolling release is that basically you don't have to change repository and they don't freeze packages and not updating them until the next release. So in Ubuntu, GNOME is not getting updated. Like you're not going from GNOME, let's say 40 to 41 during a lifespan of, let's say, a release. They always wait to update the desktop environment till the next release. But some other packages is being updated. So that's a static release. A rolling release, I'm getting a little bit asswords here. A rolling release just update everything. They just update all the time. The speed of it depends on how it's developed and the philosophy of the distribution makers and blah, 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 blah. A semi-rolling release is kind of morphing both worlds into it. So if you're running Fedora, you have to jump repositories. If you're going from Fedora 36 to 34, you have to jump repository. Why? Because some programs, some packages in Fedora is being held back to the next release. Not many, but some. And then desktop applications like Firefox, gedit, so to some extent even the fucking desktop environment, they are getting updated in a rolling fashion. But at some point, you can't update Fedora 36 anymore. Because it's not going to being supported anymore. And then you have to jump repository to Fedora 37 to continue with the rolling fashion of some of the programs, and you're also getting updated version of the packages that they have frozen. Where on a rolling release, you don't have to do that. If we install it once, update forever. That's how you should think about a rolling release. A non-rolling release is install it once, upgrade once in a while. And depending on how long that takes for the upgrade, depends on, again, the distribution makers, how they look at it. And Fedora, you have to upgrade every 6 months. You have to jump repository every 6 months. But a lot of people get confused because you are getting a lot of up-to-date packages. And again, he looks really dopey there. Again, have you spent the time to actually research Fedora? I think they say it in their own documentation that Fedora is either a crashive updating static release or a semi-rolling release. So again, just because the kernel is getting updated rapidly don't mean that it's a rolling release. Like I said, the purest form of a rolling release is one of two things. Mostly one thing, actually. You don't jump repositories. You stay on the same repository forever. Install once, update forever. Static release, install, upgrade every 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. You have to upgrade your system. You can't just update it. You get what I'm saying here? Because when you're upgrading, you're changing repository. It's so fundamental understanding about Linux that I will guess that most people that are new to Linux will understand what I just talked about.
Pretty awesome. So you get more newer hardware. It's not quite as bleeding edge as Arch. So if you have something the day of release, you're probably still better served on Arch. But it's still rolling. So you get pretty up-to-date stuff. Usually this lags maybe a month or two behind Arch. So not very far behind.
Actually, with the kernel, Arch didn't... so if Fedora tends to actually get the kernel faster than Arch, I noticed the last year or so. So yeah, like, again, I run almost all of these systems. I actually run all of these systems besides Mints that he's talking about here. And I've noticed that Tumbleweed, Fedora, in some instances actually get software faster than Arch. Just a fun little thing there.
At all. And then it uses DNF, or denitrified Yum. It used to use Yum of old.
You can still use Yum, by the way. It's not gone. You can still use it.
Which Yum of old wasn't very good. You can still use the Yum command to install, but usually that just translates it to DNF. It's not really that big of a deal, but DNF's usually what is used on all new RHEL-based systems such as Fedora. And it is an amazing package manager. DNF install, DNF remove, DNF search.
Why is there no $sign?
Very easy syntax to learn. Differential update, so it's a better, more efficient one. And overall, I like Fedora's package manager than Arch and Debian, which the package manager, to me, is what makes and breaks a distribution. It is the fundamental thing that makes it awesome.
I can't argue with that. That's personal preference. We can't argue with personal preference.
Or it can make it fail. So it just, it matters at such a high level that if you don't have a very good package manager, it can spell disaster for you down the road. So I know DNF's a solid one and probably one of my favorite of all time, if not my favorite today.
I would kind of agree. I really like DNF. I do.
Yum back in the day with like CentOS 6 was definitely a yum. Even some of CentOS 7, I know with Yum it was a little bit troublesome. It wasn't very good with dependency resolution, where apt and Pacman are very good with dependency.
Fun fact, they're actually using the lib zipper from OpenSUSE to handle that shit. That's why it's working so well. It's not a natively Red Hat or Red Hat or Fedora built tool.
Resolution, which basically means when you go to do like a DNF install Steam, sometimes it would be like, oh, I can't do that because you didn't enable 32-bit infrastructure, or I couldn't do that because you don't have this dependency. DNF's very good at dependency resolution, and just doing like a DNF install Steam works great right out of the box with Fedora. So kudos to them and their package manager. And probably the last thing about Fedora is it is based on RHEL. And I consider this the best.
Oh my god. Oh my god. No. Dude, please. I get oh fucking god. When I watched the first minute of this video, I was like, hey, CTT. I actually hey, yeah, you know what you're talking about. And then, no. Fedora is not based on RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's the other way around. So let me educate maintaining you. Let me get serious here. So, Red Hat sponsor Fedora. So what Red Hat do is that they use Fedora as a testing bed for technologies that they may or may not want to implement into their RHEL distribution. So Red Hat is telling the Fedora team, hey, fools, let's test this new init system out. So they're doing that first in Fedora if it makes sense, if it does what they need it to do, if it makes, if it's a good product, they will then implement it into RHEL. They can also say, hey, Fedora folks, try this new package manager, and they will try that out, and it turns out to be dog shit. It's not just not going to work. Then it will not be implemented into the RHEL lineup. That's why RHEL Linux is based on Fedora, and Fedora is not based on RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. But the Red Hat people have control or have a saying in what's going on with Fedora. So that's why you should look at Fedora as if you're looking at it from a system administrative person. Red Hat or Fedora Linux is basically RHEL testing. That's where they test what's going in, what is not or will be going into the new versions of Red Hat Linux and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's the other way around, and it's so fucking simple. It's in the fucking documentations for Red Hat and Fedora. Google it and you'll figure it out. Everyone in the Linux community know this. There are so many newbie mistakes going on in this video that I will kinda, to some extent, have a big asterisk after this video saying that some of it is good, some of it is no. Does it mean anything that he don't get this right? No. Does it mean anything that he don't get the rolling versus static releases right? No. Because what he's talking about here is actually personal preference. That may not apply to you at all.
It is the most secure out of pretty much any Linux distribution.
Hold my beer. To quote DJ Ware, Debian stable is the most secure, or one of the most secure Debian stable distributions out there, because the security experts are all running Debian stable. Look at all the security tools that are based on Debian stable versus all of the security tools that are based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And my 24, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years running Linux, it's what I also have experienced on a personal level, is that people that are really concerned about security all run Debian stable. Because they have a really, really, really good security team. One of the best, and in that security team is probably the most aggregation of security experts.
Debian and Arch, the more bleeding edge something is, typically the more, issues you run into. I know Debian, there was an article about this. Debian's had about 3,000 exploits over 20 years of time. I mean, it's still nothing compared to Windows. Windows is outrageous as far as the exploits you get there, but it's still a pretty high number. Arch, I'm not sure. Nobody really uses Arch for security or business, so it's more of a hobbyist distribution, where Fedora is based on RHEL, and this is what you see more in business, because Red Hat Enterprise Linux has only had in the last 20 years, I think around the...
Fedora... I really want to like this guy, but he's making it fucking hard.
1,000 exploits. So Fedora, I find, is based on something a little bit better than Debian. Also, the team is a little bit bigger because it has Red Hat behind it.
Yeah, Fedora have Red Hat behind it. That's a really good argument.
Compared to a Debian system. So those are the things I love about the operating systems, but let's actually dive into what I've done here and kind of where I'm going, just so you get an idea or a feel. Now, this entire mainframe here, this entire thing, what I'm using program-wise is BSPWM for the top portion, and then I'm using...
Okay, we don't have to... I don't want to look here... yeah, it's also the most fucking play... I love this graph that YouTube is giving us right now. It's the most replayed. It's like how he actually set up Fedora. We don't want to talk about this. I don't care. That's not what the video is. Again, he should have stopped the video here, and then he should have made a separate video about his desktop environment. I will... the Nordic theme is actually good. Kitty's a good... I like what he's using here. The Brave browser is fucking dog shit. It's not secure. It's not bombarding you with ads, but it's bombarding you with their own ads because they get money for it, okay? Brave is a big fucking scam. I should make a video about it. But anyway, what you should take away from this video is he's talking about personal preference. So if you like Debian, if you like Ubuntu, if you like Mint, if you like Arch, for whatever reason it is, run it. He said that he hates when distribution viewers is not using, or is only talking about the desktop environment and not using technologies as a basis for what makes a distribution better than the other one. He's done the exact same fucking thing that he said he don't like. He's basing a review on personal preference and the package manager and the release form, which in of itself basically means nothing about how good the system is. The release form of the distribution have no fucking implication of is it a good distribution, is it a stable distribution, how well is it maintained, how well does it function. If it's static rolling or semi-rolling, have no implications for that. It's just, do you like rolling release philosophy, do you like the static release philosophy, or do you like something in between like Fedora that's semi-rolling release? That's all it has to do, again, a personal preference. The package manager, the syntax and stuff like that, personal preference, has nothing to do with how well does it render a video. The package manager, the rolling release nature of it, or the release nature of it, has no fucking implication of that, okay? He has not talked at any length or at any point about the base technologies between these distributions. He has not talked about that Fedora is doing this better than this distribution because of these technologies that Fedora have that the other distribution makers don't have. Or that Debian is doing this really well because of technologies and underlying design decisions that other distributions don't have. He's done the exact same thing, so instead of talking about the UI, the desktop environment, he's talking about how often do you get packages and what the package manager do you like. And not to mention, he has no idea about what Fedora is. It sounds like he has no idea what Fedora is. If you're going to, again, not to copy myself here or re-explain it, if you're doing like a family tree of Fedora, it's Fedora, or it's basically that testing repositories of Fedora, rel Linux. He's basically just talking personal preferences. This is not a review, this is a personal preference video. He said he wants to do reviews. Step it up, my friend. Don't talk personal preferences, because when people are talking about desktop environments, they're talking about personal preferences. People are reviewing distributions and they're looking at themes, they're talking about personal preferences. My friend, you need to step it up. I don't care about any of the things you just said right here, because you don't understand a lot of it. But what I hope for this video was that he was like I said, he would have been taking benchmarks, the difference between the version numbers of, let's say, GCC, libavida, for example, or the core libraries of KDE, why one of them have older and one of newer, explaining the kernel, like I did. Why do you have older kernel but supporting the same hardware as a newer kernel? Firmware updates, moduling in the kernel that allows you to patch that into the kernel. Those are the things that will be making a really great distribution review. He's done the exact same thing as the things that he think is cringe. He's just done, instead of doing it with the desktop environment, he's using personal preferences for package managers and release package updates. He what he's saying here is that he likes Fedora because it gives him more up-to-date software, and he likes the syntax of the package manager. He has not done let's say what DJ Ware is doing. He's running Linus, the security testing tools to see how secure the base distribution is versus another one. He haven't done that. That would be interesting to know. If you're a security-minded person, you'll kind of know what is the Linus score right out of the bat for Fedora. What is the Linus score from Debian, Ubuntu, and Mint right out of the bat? What is the Linus score from Arch right out of the bat? Those are things that you will care about. Those are the things testing the underlying systems within Linux. He said he didn't understand desktop Linux. He still don't understand desktop Linux. I will now say, and I love this dude, okay? If you want a really good distribution review that's talking about the technical aspects of Linux, or Linux distribution, go to DJ Ware. Okay? He's doing exactly the things he said he wants to do. When DJ Ware is looking at a distribution, he's doing a little bit of the environment, the look and feel and stuff like that, but he's also like Linus scores. He's going into like, what is this? What does the new meaning or the new version of GCC mean for the distribution, and so on and so on. So you actually, it's a little bit like this. Chris Titus Tech, he's reviewing a car from a accountant standpoint, or he's reviewing a car from a consumer standpoint. He has no fucking idea how the car works. DJ Ware is reviewing a car from a mechanic viewpoint. That's the difference here. One know what they're talking about, the other one just know what they like. Chris Titus Texas just know what he likes. DJ Ware know what he's talking about. I'll stop kissing his ass now. Go watch DJ Ware's videos if you want to learn about Linux. Don't watch this dude over here. Apparently he has still not learned anything about desktop Linux. See you all later. Bye bye.